Wow, what an ending. Some of you might be surprised and others not so much, depending on if you've actually read the manga or not. I myself had, so I expected it. However, I wasn't a fan of the manga ending. I was anticipating that the anime could either flesh things out or possibly even change things completely. Attack on Titan was my favourite series. Deep down I still want it to be. I respect the production value and the amazing animation, but I'm not gonna lie, this ending was not it 3 years ago. And 3 years later, after being adapted into the anime, it still isn't it. Of course you're entitled to your own interpretation and opinions, but I'm gonna make a strong case for my final thoughts. Some of the things I have to say are positive, some of them are negative, so get used to it. Getting into the final episode. Now, just like the manga, Armin is deep-throated by a Titan and gets the opportunity to talk to Zeke in the Paths dimension, in which he convinces him that all lives are precious. It's a good conversation, I have nothing against it, nothing really to say on it either, since I've gone over it in previous videos. It allows Zeke to finally accept death at the hands of Levi, his rival. The rumbling then stops suddenly, and we see this baby in the crowd survive for now. I don't know who chose to make the crowd black and white and make the baby in colour, so it stands out, but the animation direction was great. It made the scene very tense, and I have no complaints on that. If anything, praise. The Alliance that managed to blow off Eren's final Titan head, Armin stays back to finish the job and transforms into the Colossus Titan, to blow the final Titan up and kill Eren for sure. As this is happening, we see Historia giving birth, which I can say is honestly pretty cool. It's really good imagery contrasting destruction with the birth of life. While we are meant to believe that it's over for Eren, he then transforms into the Colossus Titan himself in order to fight Armin. Even though Eren does have the hand-to-hand advantage, you can't help but think that Eren is literally standing on his last two legs, no pun intended. Mikasa's head then begins to ache, and she's taken back to this dream. This entire scene was one-on-one with the anime, so there's nothing to complain about here. In the manga Lost Girls, which isn't written by Isayama but his friend, they do show Mikasa when she was younger living in nature, so this is kind of like her returning to that almost. This is meant to be her life with Eren if Eren decided to listen to her when she confessed, but she never confessed, unfortunately. Lost Girls also mentioned the fact that the only way to save Eren was if she took him out to the wilderness. Obviously that didn't work, but it's interesting that was mentioned. All of this could have been planned from the very early stages of Attack on Titan's conception. I have no problems with this scene at all, until Falco's Titan flies over them as seen by his shadow if you look in slow motion. What is he even doing then? I guess technically, it could be Mikasa overlapping real life in a dream. I was thinking maybe this has something to do with Falco in the anime mentioning that he saw the memories of somebody using ODM gear. Unfortunately, this is never elaborated on in this episode or in the anime at all, making that our first mystery or plot hole created by the anime so far. If anybody in the comments knows or can explain this, please let me know because it's pretty confusing. This then transitions into Mikasa figuring out that Eren is in the mouth of a Colossus Titan somehow. She probably just guessed that, and that's fine because I probably would have thought the same thing as well. Either that or I would think that he's in a nape. After breaking through his teeth, she bids the boy who sought freedom goodbye and decapitates him, remembering her cabin experience as she kisses him. A lot of people have a problem with this scene, but not me. Some claim that is necrophilia, which can be defined as sexual attraction towards the dead. But regardless of if Eren's actually dead here or not, let's be honest, she's not actually attracted to his dead head, or the property of him being dead, obviously. So no, Mikasa is not a necrophile. The scene was actually pretty good, but I don't like what it represents, especially narratively. Ymir does smile in the background, and this is where my first narrative issue comes through. It's revealed that Ymir loved King Fritz. I assume this because she never truly had anybody love her, so it's probably Stockholm Syndrome towards King Fritz, so her loving her abuser. If that is the case, I don't blame Ymir. One of the problems with Ymir and Mikasa's ending is that Mikasa allegedly freed Ymir from his abusive relationship by showing her that she can let go, hence Ymir smiles, right? This is also why Mikasa kills Eren. She's showing Ymir that her nightmare is over, she even tells her that. And after that happens, she also lets go and lets King Fritz die and then disappears for good. At least it seems like that. This points towards the idea that Eren and Mikasa's relationship wasn't a positive one but rather toxic, since it's being compared to King Fritz and Ymir's. I'm not saying it necessarily is, but that's the implication of this scene. And going off that, a little bit later, that narrative is contradicted. Literally a few scenes later when she revisits Eren's grave, crying and begging to see him again. Eren in the form of a bird presumably wraps his scarf around her, hinting towards the idea that Eren might still be alive after his death, at least to some degree, because there's no way that's just a random bird that wrapped her scarf around her. Many years after Eren's death, Mikasa frequently visits him, comes to his grave with another man and then leaves flowers by Eren's side. This man is presumed to be her husband. I say this because this scene is most likely in reference to Eren saying that he wanted Mikasa to move on after 10 years. And she's definitely done that. She also has a child with a husband. For those who didn't notice, it's actually a lot more clearer in the manga. Because with the post-credits, there's only like a tiny square you have to look through, and it's kind of difficult to tell what's happening. Regardless, in fairness, it does seem that Mikasa moved on as Ymir believed that she had. Well, actually no, she hadn't, because she's still obsessed with Eren, and it completely contradicts her moving on. She still leaves roses by Eren's grave each time she visits. This is called Hanakotoba, which is the language of flowers. On the first occasion, she leaves 3 flowers, or 3 roses, which translates to I love you. On the second visit, she leaves 4, which means nothing will get between us. And on her death, she holds 5, which represents her progressing love and obsession for him. So no, Mikasa did not show Ymir how to let go at all. On to the next topic. Some people think that the man that Mikasa is with now is Armin, and I can confidently say that is not the case. Firstly, I think it should be pretty obvious that Armin sees Mikasa as nothing but a friend. He knows that Eren loved her, so I doubt that he would try to move to her, and he already seems to have feelings for Annie anyway. But the strongest argument is that that man is 4 inches taller than Mikasa. I'm not even kidding. Mikasa should already be taller than Armin. So are you trying to tell me that Armin went to Turkey, got a spinal surgery, because he's not growing 6 inches overnight? Pause. That came out a little bit wrong, but you know what I mean. From what I can see, it's pretty obvious by the hairstyle, the top hat, and the height, it perfectly matches John, who we already know loves Mikasa. John throughout the entire series has shown that he's physically attracted to Mikasa, will defend her from abuse, saying it's not cool, and dreamt an entire life with her, including having a child with her. While it is true it might not be him 100%, and instead just a random person, I'm trying to save the ending here. There's actual narrative merit to it being John rather than a random. Now I doubt he's gonna give Mikasa the same treatment that Historia got, considering that she is a female lead. As the credits continue to roll, just like in the manga, we see the destruction of Paradis Island, and oh man is it criminal. Eren promised that he would not sacrifice the island, so seeing him fail isn't great. They changed the aesthetics up a little bit so the island does look like the Rain Village for some reason, like in Naruto. Like who's even living in these metal pipe looking houses? It seems so depressing. But on a serious note, it's a throwback to the music video Akatsuki no Requiem, in which we see this advanced Paradis Island, and the OST playing is also Akatsuki no Requiem. This is almost a spit in the face because the ending is like a reversed version of this narrative within the music video, which I believe could be intentional. I won't talk too much on this, I've done a separate video before on it, you can check it out here. We're then shown this post-credit scene. It's basically a boy exploring the forest with his dog until he comes across this tree that Eren is buried underneath. It's grown massive and seems to have this opening that probably leads to a chasm, just like the one Ymir fell through 2,000 years ago to become the first Titan. The implication here is that the Titans that Eren fought so hard to erase will eventually return. Especially considering that he could still interact with the world through birds after his death, meaning Titan magic still technically does exist. If that is the case, then Ymir is still trapped in the past dimension, still creating the Titans by hand, making her not free. To be honest, her ass probably voluntarily returned there after seeing that Mikasa was capping about moving on anyway. It's quite sad to see. The next major scene is Armin recalling his hidden memory of him meeting Eren. And this was decent up until Eren telling us that Ymir chose Mikasa without much elaboration. He then infamously breaks down crying. I'm sure a lot of people knew this was coming. Even if you're not a manga reader, you probably know about this scene, and a lot of people have mixed opinions on it. Eren confesses his love for Mikasa, which I don't inherently have an issue with. I did find it a little bit random considering that he's hardly ever showed affection for Mikasa as more than just a friend, but that's not even the main problem. Some even go as far as defending this scene by saying that he's just a normal teenage boy who's ultimately human, so he's fine to cry, as some of his best moments are of him crying. Firstly, this is absolutely ridiculous. Let's make it clear, from the beginning, he's not just an ordinary person who has experienced the same things as you and me. He's a fictional character who's gone through a completely different experience, something that seems almost inconceivable. He just committed possibly the most horrendous crime that I can think of by killing 80% of humanity, that's billions of people, so I wouldn't feel too sorry for him. Secondly, yeah, some of his best moments are of him crying, sure, but the context is very, very different. Every time we've seen him cry, it's been related to his lack of resolve and him finding a way around that, because he thinks he's too weak. Every time he does cry, the following scene is always him picking himself back up and proving that he is strong. That did not happen here, so let's not lie and say it's the same thing. Rather, this whole scenario is Eren conceding, as the guidebooks confirm, which goes as far as saying that he gave up. I can see why somebody might give up. I would give up in that situation too, but he's not me. And knowing the future didn't stop him up until that point anyway. So what changed? It seems a bit spontaneous. Eren crying isn't what's bad, it's the reason, and his sudden change in character to lack resolve is not good. He wanted to save his friends but directly put them in danger despite not knowing what would happen or not, whether they would survive or not. The worst part is Eren calling himself an idiot, which I think is some serious character regression. Ymir himself did claim in an interview that he dislikes characters who concede their own philosophy, so it doesn't really make sense to me. To be intentional, right? He's become exactly what he despises. Earlier in the story, when Pixis asked Eren about what he thought if humanity rose up against a single being that united them through his sheer evil, and Eren said that it was too rosy, too predictable, and that it would never work. Yet ironically, that ends up being his own plan. In the end, Eren lost due to his trust in his friends. They believed that things would be resolved peacefully when they could not be. And Eren knew this. I'm not saying I believe it, but according to Historia, Eren told her everything that he knew. Eren knew that the island would be destroyed, he knew all of these things. He claims to have known that they would have lost, so as Armin hugs him, and thank God Ysir decided to remove this dialogue, which happened in the manga, Armin in the final chapter thanked Eren for committing mass genocide for his friends. Ysir knew straight away that it was a poor choice of words, and even apologized for it. So it being removed doesn't make the anime ending great, but it definitely makes it much better than the manga for that alone. So I do commend Ysir for that, thank you. Many people think that the message of Attack on Titan is that humans are just purely violent and conflict will always happen. Everyone is a slave to something, and Eren happened to be a slave to freedom, as he even admits himself. Now I agree that Eren was a slave to freedom, but ultimately the message of a series now seems pathetic. If that's the only thing you can take away from it, then what's the point? Everybody in the world, including yourself, knows that everybody desires something. We're human, we all have desires, and conflict will always happen. You don't even need to watch Attack on Titan to understand that, just experience life, or watch the news. But the best people don't dwell on that view. Even though it's true, it's pessimistic. I feel as if I've learned nothing new if that truly is the message of Attack on Titan, which I don't think it is. I have always believed it was rather to do with the will to fight and not give up. Even if everything is set in stone and concrete. You think Ysir would have learned something from his favourite piece of fiction, Love, which has a similar narrative. I just don't get it. Ysir's talked about not believing in fate, but somehow his main protagonist's life is bound by fate. I want a season 1 aura of, to achieve anything you have to sacrifice everything mentality to return. So I have to believe that there's more to this ending. Hopefully Ysir will expand upon Attack on Titan in the future. Some of you might think that Eren just wanted to sleep under that tree and have a peaceful life. But that's not true, that's not the way he is, that's not his main motivation. His main goal was always to see that scenery. Now what scenery am I talking about, you might be wondering? A lot of people say that it's the clouds or the volcanic terrain, but I disagree. The guidebook confirms that he wanted his friends to live in that scenery. You can't exactly live in the clouds or in a volcano, so I think rather the scenery is a place. Hopefully one day Ysir can show us what he was talking about exactly, but I have a feeling that this scenery is what motivated the Attack Titan to strive for freedom. The Alliance members who were Titanized return back to the human states after Eren is defeated, taking away from attention a little bit. I feel like there should have been slightly more deaths. You know, it is Attack on Titan, it's not meant to be this happy, rainbow, sunny story. It only gets worse from there. Armin took no jutsus the Malian soldiers to spare them without much difficulty, which I found very hard to believe, but I will let it slide. On Paradis Island, all of the regiments are combined into one by the Jaegerists. They become fascist and are under the control of Historia, meaning that the Jaegerists won and the Alliance failed anyway, so maybe Eren shouldn't have put all of his belief in them. You think he would know that if he can see the future, right? Or maybe it's outside his control. But you know, maybe that's the message of Attack on Titan. Maybe there is no peaceful resolve. Historia is a fascist and a lot of people hate her, rightly so. However, that's her entire character. She's meant to be the worst girl in the world, remember, so I'll let that slide too. But what I won't let slide is a reveal that the farmer was the father. Well, technically the anime doesn't confirm it. It actually does this weird transition from Eren to the girl's face. It's kind of like in the third Star Wars movie when Palpatine tells Anakin that he can create life from nothing and then just stares at him. Keeping in mind that Anakin allegedly never had a father, it's a little bit sus, especially with all the weird fertilization imagery shit going on in the background. Now I'm not saying Eren is the father. It's very clearly shown that the kid has brown eyes, so I'm pretty confident that it's not his, but it's kind of a bummer that we waited so long for there to be no major reveal. I have to assume it's just a farmer, which to be honest it probably is. It ruined any chance of Eren surpassing his father, something that was alluded to many times before, but I'm not going to dwell on too much. I've done separate videos on that, so that was kind of disappointing. I mean, Eren should at least have known what comes after his death. He wanted his friends to be heroes, but he didn't know if they would survive the rumbling or not? Seriously? I guess in the end, it's up to you if you enjoyed the ending or not. In my opinion, I don't think it was that good, but of course you're entitled to your own. Don't get me wrong, the entire series as a whole is very good, but that ending is more like a 4 out of 10 or something, which is really weird for a series that consistently hits 9s. That's why I think the ending is almost as bad as the Game of Thrones ending, if not worse. So let me know down in the comments what you think, and until next time, see you later, Eren.